for pre-need funerals, burials, and cremation since 1975. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg. Mr. Willie Joyner, age 77 of Sylacauga, died Tuesday, February the 9th. Funeral service will be today at 2 o'clock from Estelle Community Church. The body will lie in state at the church from 1 until 2. Burial in the Bluff Spring Cemetery. Online condolences at CurtisandSonFH.com. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, directing that service. Mr. Ricky Howell Shearling, age 55 of Alpine, died at his residence on Thursday. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, announcing. Funeral service for Sue B. Sasser, age 83 of Childersburg, will be Sunday at 2 o'clock from Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel. I'll be officiating that service. Visitation 1 hour prior to the service. Burial in the Childersburg Cemetery. Online condolences at CurtisandSonFunerals.com. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel, directing. Miss Viola Garrett, funeral service for her graveside service will be Saturday at 1 o'clock from Kingston Baptist Church Cemetery in Alpine. Sims Funeral Service directing. Celebration of life for Overseer Antoinette M. Averett, age 55, is Saturday at 1 o'clock from New Hope Baptist Church Cemetery in Sylacauga, with Archbishop Marshall Thomas officiating. Visitation is today from 1 until 7 o'clock, with the family hour from 5 to 7, all at Community Funeral Home. Overseer Averett died February the 3rd at Brookwood Medical Center in Birmingham. Online condolences at communityfuneralhome.org. Community Funeral Home, Sylacauga, directing. Memorial service for Mrs. Patricia Ann Grisdale, age 79 of Munford, will be Saturday. The family will accept friends from noon until 2 p.m. at Talladega Funeral Home, and the service will follow at 2 in the chapel. Neil Hammock officiating the service. Talladega Funeral Home directing. Celebration of life remembering Mr. Willie Jimison, age 68 of Talladega, is Saturday at 1 p.m. from Kelly Springs Memorial Gardens, with the Reverend Nathaniel Ashley officiating. Public viewing is today from 2 until 7 at S.M. Goodson Funeral Home. S.M. Goodson Funeral Home and Crematory in Talladega directing. Mr. Jenny McMeans, graveside service will be Saturday at 11 o'clock from Kingston Baptist Church Cemetery in Alpine. Sims Funeral Service directing. Funeral Mass and Celebration of Life for Mrs. Marie Carlisle, age 98 of Alexander City, will be Tuesday, February 16th at 2 o'clock at St. John the Apostle Catholic Church, with Father Victor Ingalls officiating. Burial in the Alexander City Cemetery. The family will receive friends Tuesday, February 16th from 1 until 1:45 at the church. Mrs. Carlisle died Wednesday, February the 10th. She was a founding member of the St. John the Apostle Catholic Church and was an active member there for many years. In lieu of flowers, the family requests contribution be made to the St. John the Apostle Catholic Church, 454 North Central Avenue, Alexander City, Alabama, 35010, or to the Studio Arts and Education, 3674 Highway 63 South, Alexander City, 35010. Memorial messages may be sent to the family at radneyfuneralhome.com. Radney Funeral Home, Alexander City directing. Graveside service for Mr. Robert L. Edison, age 87, is Saturday at 1 o'clock from Macedonia Memorial Garden Cemetery in Goodwater. Dr. Melvin Urban officiating. Visitation today, 1 until 5 o'clock at Zion Memorial Funeral Home Chapel in Sylacauga. Zion Memorial Funeral Home, Sylacauga, directing the service. Funeral service for Mr. Terrence Stovall Sr., age 54. That service 2 o'clock Saturday at Miracle Missionary Baptist Church in Alexander City. Visitation today, 4 until 7 at the funeral home. Armours Memorial Funeral Home, Alexander City directing. Visitation and funeral services held at Calvary Baptist Church for Linda Owings, age 73. Visitation is at 11 o'clock, funeral at noon Reverend Paul Hickman, along with Reverend James Gallups officiating. Special music provided by Mrs. Louise McGrady. Graveside service at Tallahatchie Cemetery, the Reverend Paul Hickman officiating. Radley Smith Funeral Home, Sylacauga directing. Carolyn Russell Brown, age 74, died February the 9th. Funeral arrangements to be announced by Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary. Funeral service for Audrey Davis Garrett, age 66, is 2 o'clock Saturday at Terry's Mortuary Chapel. Visitation today, 2 until 7 at the funeral home. Online condolences at terrysmortuary.com. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. And funeral service for Barbara Morgan Lawler, age 73, will be noon Saturday at Terry's Mortuary Chapel. Visitation today, 2 until 7 o'clock at the funeral home. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. Funeral service for Doyle Vincent Joyner. Visitation on Saturday from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock at Ursery Funeral Home, with a chapel service to follow at 2, with the Reverend Jerry Colquitt officiating. Interment in the Pine Hill Cemetery. Online condolences at urseryfuneralhome.com. Ursery Funeral Home, Talladega directing. And funeral service for Martha Gale Joyner will also be held at Ursery Funeral Home. Visitation at 1 o'clock, service at 2. Reverend Jerry Colquitt officiating. Interment in the Pine Hill Cemetery. Memorials can be made to the Beamiston Baptist Church, 300 James Street, Talladega, 35160. Online condolences at urseryfuneralhome.com. Ursery Funeral Home, Talladega directing. Graveside service for Terry Lynn Cordner, age 65, will be today at 2 o'clock from Rockford Cemetery, with Wendell Jensen officiating. Ms. Cordner died February the 7th at her residence. She was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Radley Smith Funeral Home in Sylacauga directing. Funeral service for Mr. Bobby Allen Smith, age 83, of Alexander City, is today at 1 p.m. from the chapel of Radley Funeral Home. Randy Anderson officiating. Burial in the Hillview Memorial Park. The family receiving friends today, 11 a.m. until 12:30 at the funeral home. Mr. Smith died February the 8th at his residence. He was a member of the Rocky Creek Baptist Church. Radley Funeral Home, Alexander City, in charge of the arrangements. And funeral service for Mr. Luther Tolbert Sr. Will be today at 11 a.m. from Great Bethel Baptist Church in Alexander City. Armours Memorial Funeral Home, Alexander City, in charge of the arrangements. This obituary report this morning brought to you by Curtis & Son Funeral Home, the North Chapel on Highway 21 in Sylacauga, and the Childersburg Chapel on Highway 280 in Childersburg. For pre-need funerals, burials, or cremation since 1975, Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg.